on a decline in January.
Health Canada says that 7,115 kilograms of dried flower cannabis was sold in January, which is down 3.7% from December, according to the government agency's monthly tracking system. That was updated late on Wednesday. Overall, sales of dried cannabis were up. But since cannabis was made legal in Canada for recreational purposes, but now
So that would
declined.
So that would mean that the sales, since cannabis came legal for recreational in Canada, the sales have gone up 11% over what they were as recreational, or not as the medical market was.
Right.
That's the way. Whereas
right. Because that's the only
overall,
sales that
when
they
you
can
combine
track.
when you combine the two, it's actually less than last month's. You can see that 270 kilograms less.
Yeah, big numbers there. Government is not seeing the windfall numbers that they thought they were going to see. They did increase quite a bit. They were quite happy with numbers. November and December overall tracking says that, cannabis sales were on track to be huge. Then January came and bang, it's going down, and a lot. A lot of people are saying, well, they went to the legal realm and they tried the legal stuff, and for all of the hassles and all of the problems combined with the lesser quality of product, people are just generally migrating back to their original sources.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. When things don't come out smoothly and problems appear, like here in Ontario, we have a story about that further on into the report. But, no stores has obviously, like.
Who wants to place an order? You have to use a credit card only that can be tracked by government officials, your credit agency, as well as U.S. authorities, which can impede your right to cross the border if you're in a business that does that kind of stuff. Who wants to do that and then wait 3 to 5 business days for your product to arrive when you can just go to Buddy down the road?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's much easier to go down the road. The same as where the store locations are. Here, like I said last week, we're a 4-hour round trip just to go to a store. So it costs you more in gas than you're going to spend there.
Northern Ontario, people that live in Thunder Bay, 11 hours one way.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Okay, and as far here, they said Statistics Canada said that annualized Canadian household spending on cannabis totaled $6 billion in the fourth quarter, with the black market accounting for almost $5 billion of that figure.
Yeah. Black market isn't going anywhere. The government legalization. I don't know. I don't know how they thought that this was going to work.
Yeah. They've put too tight of a noose around it.
Yeah.
In order for it to prosper the way it should have.
Yeah. And I can't wrap my head around how any one of them could honestly believe that this would work.
Yeah. Just so you know, the CD Howe Institute estimates that the shortages has cost the Canadian government $105 million in excise and sales tax.
It's cost them that money. Yeah.
That
money. Yeah. They're short on that money. No, it didn't cost them a dime. Their screw ups is impeding the market, and their regulations are impeding the market. They're slitting their own throats.
Yeah. Well, see if they learn from their lessons.
Yeah.
Only time will tell.
Another one, watch and see.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And it's not only having the prices, all these other problems having an effect on recreational end, but it's also having problems with the medical cannabis end as well as the taxes. In our next story, talks about how it's pushing patients to the legal sources, which helps reflect the numbers in the last story.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like we talked about for the recreational consumer, going down the street to Buddy down the road that has a good product at a reasonable cost, that's not exclusive to recreational patient or recreational consumers. Patients are gravitating towards that resource once again, as well, already again, because of the excise tax. Legalization put an increased tax on an already overtaxed medicine for
Yeah,
patients.
yeah.
Cannabis is the only legally prescribed medication in this country that is subject to a sales tax. And whatever sales tax is implemented in your province applies to cannabis on prescription medicine. The excise tax with legalization is added on top of that
Yeah.
for patients as well. Um, Patients simply can't afford it.
Oh, I know. I mean, tax and tax and tax. It's ridiculous, and it's a menace. And according to the story here, Peter Thurley of the Canadians for Fair Access to Medical Cannabis or marijuana, he says that his costs have gone up in the last few months as producers have passed along the tax costs to the patients, and
Yeah.
that has to stop.
Yeah, yeah. He's hopeful that the government will actually listen to the patients and have these taxes taken off. Now, government stand is they don't want to remove the tax on medical because they're afraid that recreational users will gravitate towards the medical system. Well,
Yeah,
really?
uh, really, like.
Really?
It's a real sad claim to make because
Oh,
that means they're the doctors who sign for the medical patients, they have no faith or trust in them,
that's
uh,
right.
be-
You're
because they're the
saying
ones
that
that
the Canadian
yeah
doctors don't know what they're doing or are willing to willy-nilly prescribe medications to patients without proper analysis of their needs. That's what you're saying. You have zero faith as a government in your own medical system.
yeah exactly. Well, as the Steam fan Peter Thorley says here, he says the reality is that tax is forcing people to consider going to the black market where you can find a product for as low as $3 a gram and have it delivered straight to your door.
Yeah. Yeah, he's quoted here as saying, for many folks, it's a no-brainer. Do I spend $300 this month and have money left over for food, or do I spend the $600 at a government-registered place?
Yeah. And the only way you're going to get any tax exemption on your cannabis medication is if you buy CBD-based products.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they have to be
Tax
very
exempt.
low. Yeah,
Yeah. I
very
mean, it's
low.
non-existent. It's no longer a health product. It's an added benefit to a cream.
Yeah.
You know,
Look at this.
I
The
mean,
the federal government says excise taxes are important to help fight organized crime and keep cannabis out of the hands of children. Hello? You going to put a tax on it to keep it out of the hands of children? Really?
I mean, the excuses just are overwhelmingly baffling. That they could think that Canadians are going to buy this stuff. What's even more baffling are the freaking Canadians that do buy this stuff. Wake up, people! It's not about this at all. It's about money. It always has been. The government wants a stranglehold on this. They want the money. They want all of the money, and they don't want the common person to have any of it. And that's what all of these regulations and taxes are for.
It's it's ridiculous, and especially on tax wrong. The hashtag don't tax medicine.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what's trending right now. Hashtag don't tax medicine.
listen.
Hopefully, it'll be a focal point as well for 420s that are up and coming this April across the globe, as well as GMMs, which happens shortly after that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, talking about the government and fears. Here we have the next story, the RCMP. We heard this all long ago. They're worried that the Hells Angels and the Mafia will take over the medical cannabis business. They said this years ago, and they don't trust the RCMP. Don't trust the government to make sure that that's not happening. Isn't that what those all those
So
safety, security checks are all for.
Yep. So here we have this scenario where the government doesn't trust the people. The RCMP doesn't trust the government. The people don't trust any of them. I mean, that's our system right now, right?
Well, yeah. Well, they say, according to the internal RCMP report, they stated that the Mexican cartels are coming this way.
Yeah. I think we have an issue with trust in this country at this present time.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
I mean, everywhere. And probably rightfully so, because of the crap that has gone on. Because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry at its beginnings. I mean, it's the birth that is happening. We are witnessing the birth of an industry right now. We're there for it, live in action, and we'll go down in the history books as such. So what happens in the next few years is going to really shape how this comes out. And because of the dollar value, everybody's got their hand in there. And the medical part of it is getting lost.
Says here, the RCMP's initial background check of applicant ventures have turned up significant hits and raised significant alarm bells inside the federal policing program.
Inside the federal policing program.
Yeah.
The government doesn't trust the doctors, and RCMP doesn't trust the government. So what do we make of all of this? Well, you know what? If the strangleholds weren't there, then maybe the common people and the patients that created this industry in the first place would still have control of it, and we wouldn't have these issues.
Not only are they trying to get into the the cannabis end of things, but they're also, according to this report, very active in the mining industry as well. I just thought I'd mention that.
Thought you'd throw that in there for me, eh, Al?
Yeah, I thought I would. Yeah.
Of course, my family is in mining, so just
they say that they're after the Canadian resource industries, and they just that's what they're going for.
I think the RCMP have grandiose claims here on all counts. The cartels aren't interested in this. The cartel is interested in continuing their exports of hard drugs over the borders and supply lines for stuff like cocaine and methamphetamine and fentanyl and all that kind of stuff. They're not interested in cannabis, especially now that it's becoming legal.
Yeah, it's they're trying to not ship it here by the looks of it, as in the old way, but it looks like they're trying to become the operators of the businesses.
Yeah, we'll see. How much of that is factual, we'll have to watch and see. RCMP have been known to make grandiose claims to bolster their numbers and their budgets in the future. Often in the past, they've done that.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt. Just in the cannabis end of things alone, without the cartels, they've done that. All you got to do is look at $1,000 for a plant that would even produce 3 grams of cannabis.
Yeah, that's right. And the cost value on that, it was always assessed at $1,000.
That's right.
So you've got to look at the source. RCMP, yeah, well.
All right. Well, talking about supplies and who's got what and so on and so forth. See, here in the province, we've had we've got no stores, and we're only opening 25 stores to get open.
Yeah,
and they're all supposed to be. And they're supposed to be open by April the 1st. But according to this report in the Ottawa Citizen, it doesn't appear that many stores are going to be ready to go.
Yeah, probably none. So, I mean, originally they were supposed to have fines levied against them if they're not ready on time. So whether or not the government's going to follow through with that, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But I mean, the timeline that the government gave these people was ridiculously unreasonable.
Yeah, exactly. They say here that for the lottery winners who won the right to apply in the first wave of licenses haven't even announced their locations yet. For those four, they're from Toronto and the GTA. It looks like it's impossible for them to meet the deadline. The public is allowed 15 days to comment on locations, and lottery winners have 5 days to reply, so that's 20 days. And as of Thursday, there's only 17 days remaining until April the 1st. So there's four in the Toronto and GTA area that aren't even going to be up and running.
Yeah, and that's just allowing for the location to be chosen. Well,
yeah,
got to do the renovations and the cleanups and the setups and hire staff, secure your lease before that.
Building approvals, all that stuff.
It. Everything that comes with it. No way. Can't happen.
They say there's another 5 stores that the public comment period doesn't end until almost March the 27th, which only gives them 4 days. Really, not even 4 days to get the thing up and running. So that's not going to happen either.
No, that's right.
So they're not sure how many are going to be gone.
Nobody's going to be open. Nobody's going to be open. The one that I'm really surprised at, I think the most, is the fact that some of the LPs that are permitted to open one store on their own property, they're not ready to go either.
No, but have they been actually given? See, the 25 licenses were not given to weren't given to the licensed producers, so they would not have received their license to be able to sell it out the door. Right. It's agreed that they will receive one, but it hasn't been determined when. Yeah,
it hasn't been. It's not pre-approved. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems to me that they should be, no matter how much we dislike it, but the fact is, that's the factory.
Yeah.
They should be one of the first to be up and ready to go. Just because they could be. They have the resources.
Could be, but
The object here is not to please me and what I want necessarily, or what the masses want. We have to deal with the fact of what we've got. We've got an LP system that's doing the distribution. So in light of that, the whole object should be giving the people resources to gain access to it. That should be the first stop.
Well, as they say, as it right now it stands, 9 of the 21 lottery winners that have announced the locations have affiliated with other cannabis shop chains, such as Spirit Leaf, Shome Cannabis, Fire and Flyer, Hobo, and others. Yeah. And operators of the 3 stores in Ottawa say they are aiming to open up on April the 1st, barring any unforeseen circumstances, which obviously can pop up out of nowhere.
The 2 stores in Northern Ontario, with all of Northern Ontario, which is over half the province, we get 2 stores for the entire region, and one of them has completed the public commenting process, and they're awaiting a license. And the other store still is in the public comment stage until March 22nd.
Exactly. In Western Ontario, there's 2 stores have both licenses, because there is 2 licenses that are needed. One store has completed their public comment stage and is waiting a license. 4 stores are in the public comment stage, and they list them all here. So, and they're not going to be ready by the end of March before they're done. In Toronto, the GTA area, there's 6 stores. One store has both licenses. One store has of 2 licenses, in Burlington. Let's see. 2 stores are completed public comments and are waiting licenses. That's in Oshawa and Ajax.
And one still hasn't even announced a location.
2 of them, it says here. 2 of them haven't even announced.
2. And that's just the GTA, that little bit. So that's all the areas around outside of the downtown core. So basically Toronto, the core city of Toronto, also has 5 stores coming out.
Yeah, only one of them has got both licenses. Two of
Yes.
the stores have completed public comment and are waiting licenses, and two of the winners haven't even announced locations yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
So you're
right
looking at
in
April the
Toronto.
1st, you might have one store in all of the city of Toronto.
Yeah. 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 I
Yeah.
mean, it's it's not going well in Ontario. That is for sure.
No, not going well at all. Not going well at all there. All right. Well,
One
on to our
place, yeah,
next.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
One place in Ontario that is doing a little bit better is an event that's taking place, right?
There's an event taking
Yeah,
place.
yeah, the craft beer.
Oh, yes, craft beer. Yes, right. And because of the craft beer, it's a what is it, like a craft beer expo?
Yeah, it's a festival that takes place every year down in Toronto, and it's basically just what it says. It's the various craft breweries that get together and they have an expo on beer, and it's a beer expo. This year they're adding in a new feature, and there will be a cannabis-friendly space for consumption.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
They're going to allow this? They're gonna
yeah,
have
fine.
a patio, as they call it?
A potio is
Does
coming.
that mean that does that mean at the Lift Expo they gotta have a beer tent?
I don't know. They're billing this as the very first patio that's being at an event in
Yeah.
Toronto. Well, sorry, but no, it's not. Maybe it's the first one since legalization,
Legalization.
but it's not the first one at an event in Toronto, that's for sure.
Now this would be outside, right?
Yeah, it's taking place outside. I believe it's at the old Ontario Place grounds.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They say here that they want to offer people a place to come down from the beer. You don't have to consume cannabis to experience a creative, chill, and vibrant patio, according to Abby Roach. Box Cafe is involved in this.
Yeah, Abby is the one that petitioned to get this done. She's the one that's going to be taking control of the space and supplying everything that's needed to in the space for people to consume. It's basically moving the patio of the Hotbox Cafe down to this event and replicating that there, and then creating a lounge type experience for the event goers and the outdoors in the tents at Ontario Place during
Yeah.
this beer expo.
Is this a way of getting your foot in the door, trying to prove to the provincial government that cannabis lounges can do well, that there isn't an issue, and by having one at a location like this, might help prove that. Unfortunately, it is involved with alcohol, and sometimes alcohol and crowds just don't get along.
Yeah. I'm sure that's the overall backdoor policy for Abby Roach. She is a lounge owner that
Yeah.
has had to close her backyard patio and on-site consumption space in Kensington Market after operating for 19 years because of legalization and the new smoke-free policy in Ontario. So I'm sure that it was what was on her mind. She is a strong businesswoman with
Yeah.
a strong business sense. So she's looking for ways to show the government and to show the city safe consumption spaces are going to be utilized. They are safe and they are a better alternative than people just smoking wherever on the streets.
Mhm.
So, for sure that's part of the agenda here for Miss Roach, for sure. There's no question. My problem with it is, why an alcohol venue? Why a beer festival? Why are you combining pot with alcohol when all the research and even the government says don't mix them?
Mhm. I know. The one thing I liked about it was because it was craft.
Yeah.
Craft beer,
It's
craft
initiating
cannabis.
craft cannabis with the craft beer. I see all of the parallels, but it's still a booze fest.
Can't argue with you there. Okay, Kim. Well, it's break time.
All
Time
right,
for some
sounds
more
good.
medication. What do you think? Sounds
Sounds
good to you?
good. Yeah.
Okay. As we do that, our listeners will hear a CBS report on cannabis sales in California. You might be quite surprised, how those results are. Yeah. And you'll know that we're coming back when you hear about Smoky Amsterdam. You're listening to Reefer Reporters. We are live here at 420 Radio. .ca. I don't know. Did you go off?
Did you hear my headphones hit the floor?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
We're on
we're done.
Hey, this is Cheech. And this is Chong. And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time. 420 Radio? Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
But first, our top story at 6:30. Has the promise of legal pot gone up in smoke?
Supporters say the associated taxes could bring in $1 billion a year, but KPI X5's Wilson Walker tells us the reality is really nothing close to that. Wilson?
Yeah, not going to come anywhere close to $1 billion this year. We are at Magnolia, Oakland, one of the dispensaries you will find here in the East Bay. Now, we were here in this very same facility exactly a year ago. They were pretty much throwing a party here, trying to unload as much product as they could before the taxes took hold. Well, here we are 1 year later, and the party is over. Just 1 year ago, the arrival of legalized cannabis came with a good bit of celebration in this industry.
This is wonderful.
1 year later.
And it's just obviously tough for any legal business with the taxes.
And this is something a whole lot of people saw coming. This time last year, we crisscrossed the state of California asking anyone who has anything to do with this plant what they expected in 2018. And the consensus prediction was best delivered by an entrepreneur named Donnie Anderson.
The state and city see money and they want to overtax.
That fear, over-regulation, did not take long to materialize. The first distress signals came from small growers in just the first week of March.
I sold my farm yesterday, but the over-regulations have stopped me from being able to move forward.
By July, testing requirements left many stores with shelves that bordered on empty.
These are the only ones that we currently have up to state compliance.
And with the wheels seemingly coming off, lawmakers in Sacramento tried to roll out plans for some cannabis market relief.
And it reduces state excise tax from 15% to 11%.
Those efforts were unsuccessful in 2018, and so a lot of important work was left 50, 75% finished.
Hezekiah Allen is an industry lobbyist. Ask him why California is well short of its cannabis revenue projections. He'll point straight to the law approved by California voters. It was based on the idea of local control, laws changing at city and county lines. So local pushback has dramatically downsized the California market.
There's only less than 1,000 retail locations in a state that could probably be best served by 10,000 or more retailers.
I don't know, maybe my way I'm thinking of it is it's maybe easier to think of it as an economy than a cash register. I mean, it has to work systemically for there to be any kind of payoff for the state.
Absolutely. I mean, if
Legacy 420 has medicinal and recreational products down to a science, literally. With 2 biochemists on staff and a chief scientific advisor, every product is tested in the Legacy 420 laboratory. Legacy 420, Tyndonega. Open 9 to 9 every day. Visit legacy420.com.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with Tamara Wana. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham, and no week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show, featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at 420radio.ca. An apple a day won't keep this doctor away, but a gram of cannabis may keep you away from the doctor. Find out how by tuning into The Higher Estate with Dr. Ira Price, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here at 420radio.ca. Tune in to DJ Passion from the land of Ganja, the island of Jamaica, when he comes to you live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 420radio.ca.
Dancing round in circles, feeling mighty fine, trying to find the heavens in a glass of wine, honestly smiling, this is who I am, walking down the streets of smoky Amsterdam, high flying in the air, fear is dying.
Okay, we're back, we're live, and we got some medication into us. Plus, we got reloaded. We got reloaded for the next break. Hey, Kim, what's our next story?
I think we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in some other First Nations territories around Ontario.
That's right, because 6 Nations has passed a law to regulate cannabis in its territory here in Ontario.
Yeah, they've come up with their own little regulatory scheme that's going to be enacted on all 6 Nations territories in southern Ontario. The band office conducted community consultations before approving the new law that lays out regulations for marijuana cultivation, distribution, sales, and use.
That's right. It's a 22-page document, which they say is meant to protect the health and safety of 6 Nations and the most populous First Nations in Canada. It also says that the regulations approved last month are also meant to prevent interference by external law enforcement into 6 Nations domestic affairs.
Yeah, so it's another First Nations territory that's laying down the law and saying, no. We are governing ourselves in this. We aren't part of the provincial or the federal regulations for cannabis law. We're creating our own laws that will be enacted on our property.
That's right. Well, the law also stipulates that there's 8% of vendors' sales must be handed over to the band office at the end of each month to go towards community projects. The council will hold the community contribution funds in trust until the community identifies priority areas for the funds to be utilized.
Yeah, the minimum age to cultivate, distribute, and sell or use recreational cannabis will be 19. Nobody is allowed to smoke or vape in public, including around schools, longhouses, or in churches. So pretty much similar to provincial regulations.
Yeah, but here's a little change. Those who break the law face mandatory education sessions upon the first offense, and then fines up to $1,000 for second transgression and $5,000 for each one after that.
That's
ouch! Right. $5,000 for smoking a joint on this, smoking in public. Wow!
Yeah. If you're smoking outside of a designated area, they will have designated areas to smoke.
Yeah.
So they don't want it around their churches and their longhouses and stuff like that, and their places of worship, schools, that kind of thing. That's where the crackdown's going to be, I think.
Yeah. The document also states that license issued by authorities outside the territory has no validity within 6 Nations.
Yeah. Ontario government is trying to regulate First Nations cannabis retailers in April, but it has limited them to 25 in Ontario, as we all know, like we just talked about. So 6 Nations don't feel that they're a part of that, and going to just open up their own stores on First Nations land and in Six Nations territories and govern themselves accordingly. So there could be opportunities for other retail outlets besides provincial government-run stores.
Yeah, they say here in August, the chief, Ava Hill, said that her community wasn't going to wait for the government to dictate the terms of legalized cannabis. She says that the days of them sitting and telling us this is how it's going to be done needs to end.
Yeah, they're over. They're over. The Band Council plans to establish Cannabis Control Commission to oversee the law within 6 months of it coming into force. So, I mean, things are happening on Six Nations territories.
Yeah. Well, a spokesman for the Ministry of the Attorney General says that Ontario has and will continue to engage with First Nations people, communities, and organizations to discuss interests, perspectives, concerns, and consider options for collaboration.
I don't think they're interested in that.
Doesn't sound like it.
Discuss all they want, but it sounds to me like they're going ahead with what they want to do, which is their inherent right to do so under the Native treaties. They've got the right to do it. It's a medicine that's been in their culture for forever. So they have inherent right, and I'm glad to see this happening in First Nations and in Six Nations, and I hope other First Nations territories also step up and start looking at this.
Now, they also say that the Band Council plans to establish a Cannabis Control Commission to oversee the law within 6 months of it coming into enforce.
Yep. So within 6 months, we'll see something happening on Six Nations territories, and probably see some shops before that.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there is as many down there as you would see, like in Tanaganaga.
Yeah, well, that could change with this new bill coming forth in Six Nations territory. It's giving people direction. So, I mean, once it was established a direction on Tyendinaga, that's when we saw the influx, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could see the same thing happening here. So good news happening for another region in Southern Ontario. Northern Ontario First Nations territories need to start looking at this.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. There's no doubt about that. That's for sure. All right. Now, talking about getting cannabis to the people, I see in Manitoba, they're talking about potential vendors wanting to sell cannabis in rural areas.
Yeah, this is very intriguing to me, being a rural Ontario person. I mean, Canada, we have some big, huge cities with millions of people in them, but the vast majority of this country is rural. And our needs largely go unconsidered in the grand scheme of things, especially with new legislations and new industries like cannabis. All of the focus is in the major cities. Rural Canada is being left off the map. We see it in Northern Ontario with only 2 stores to supply.
And they're across the street from each other, aren't they?
Yeah, they're across the street from each other in one town in Sudbury. If you're in Thunder Bay, it's an 11-hour trip. You know, we have a thing in place, you know, for alcohol distribution in Northern Ontario, and all of rural Canada has, you know, provisions in place for alcohol distribution. I don't see why the vendors that get the alcohol distribution, why can't we just license them to also distribute cannabis?
Well, I see here in Manitoba that the government has 100 organizations that have pre-qualified to sell retail cannabis in places like this.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic initiative that other provinces really need to take a look at. Large portions of most provinces are rural.
Yeah. Then it looks like in Manitoba, most of these stores have all opened in Winnipeg and Brandon.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing happening there as it's happening here in Ontario, where, you know, everybody's going to the big cities, which is, you know, sort of expected, I would guess. But this is it's good that they have people who are willing to go out to these places in order to serve those communities.
Yeah, and the other arm of this is more than 20 of the new applicants are also members of the Manitoba Hotel Association.
Yeah.
Members of the Ontario Hotel Association. These are members that are own the little B&Bs and the little strip motels, drive-up motels that are on the highway and stuff like this that have, alcohol distribution and all of that kind of thing going on in the shop as well. We see that all over in Canada, where the corner store is the gas station, and the post office and the liquor store. Why not the cannabis outlet?
Why not? Yeah, that's right. Exactly. There's not one far from here either. I can tell you that. I drove by it the other day. It's got everything in it.
That's it. That's it. One
And
stop shopping.
I'm not even in Northern Ontario, and we haven't.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great initiative coming out of Manitoba that other provinces really need to take a look at. They say that they're looking for additional opportunities for operators, especially those in smaller communities, to continue to be relevant and to continue to collect the taxes, which is also very important to them. The footnote on my part, and also to employ people. This industry can prosper.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Talking about prospering, and we know in Ontario we restricted 25 stores because of the shortage. Alberta's increased their stores. Nova Scotia's looking at increasing their stores. Manitoba, as we just mentioned, looking at pre-qualified 100 stores to go rural. But yet here in our next story is about a cannabis store owner who's anxiously awaiting for cannabis to arrive.
Yeah, and you know what? This isn't a rare story by any means. A lot of people hardworking people that put their life savings into a new enterprise to get in on the bottom floor of this are finding it rather difficult to maintain their livelihoods. Legalization is a big bonanza, but for small business, not so much.
That's right. Yeah. Well, they say here that this person, Grant Gunther. He took out a lease to open his store called Strain Lane, and the problem is he can't get his hands on any cannabis, and the rent is due every month, just like any other place. But yet, the AGLC, which is Alberta Gaming and Licensing Commission, suspended the granting of new licenses months ago because there was a shortage. So this guy, him and his wife got all their money invested in this business, but yet they have no cannabis to sell.
Yeah, well, they can't open their doors to sell stuff if there's nothing on the shelf to sell. Because their doors are closed doesn't mean the rent isn't due. The rent is still due. So how do you make the rent? So now you're trying to run a business and you have to go out and run a full-time job just to keep your business afloat. Well, who's paying the bills in your house?
Yeah.
It winds up a vicious circle. You're losing money hand over fist every single month. And the problem is what a lot of these small business entrepreneurs that are in this now in places like this are saying that the larger corporations are getting first shot at the cannabis as it becomes available.
Yeah.
And they're last.
Part of the requirement was that, they have to have a location and stuff like this. And so you go out and get everything, and then, you finally get your license. You're paying all this rent all this time, and then you got no product to put into it.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. The only way to get in early and to make to make a play for legal weed, as they say, was to get in early. That was the only way to do it. The only way to get in is to get in on the bottom floor. Well, to do that, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 or more before you're even seeing a dime come in.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. I read about one guy who's invested $1 million into his store.
Yeah.
And it still doesn't have any cannabis in it. Well,
no cannabis in it, or no cannabis for sale, or limited amounts where you're only open 2 or 3 days a week for a half a day. This kind of thing, because there's simply no stock.
Yeah. So yeah, some of these people, and actually, I recognize Jenny's name here, and people are going to, obviously they were looking for something good, and now it looks like it's going to be a bust, and it's taking people's life savings.
Yeah, they said they eventually did push the ball forward, but it wasn't until like November that they started issuing permits, and that's when they got theirs after going through a whole bunch of hoops. When host David Gray described the cannabis retail industry as a contest of pitting big, well-financed corporate fishes against small mom-and-pop size fishes, Gunter agreed. He said that's pretty much how it is. So how does a little fish survive in a big swimming pool of big business and well-heeled big fish?
That's right. It's not an even playing field. So
It's not. Especially when the big fish are being fed first.
Yes, exactly. That's not fair whatsoever. We don't know exactly how it's all rolled out, whether the stuff just shows up and people have to apply and to get that cannabis from said businesses, or, as we're seeing, there's agreements. And those agreements go ahead before all those little guys who obviously,
If there's anything left after the agreements are fulfilled, then that goes out to the general population of these little fish that are looking for stock. But the big guys that have agreements, they get it first.
Yeah, it just sounds like a bunch of people around, and someone's throwing in a piece of chicken, and everybody's running for it all at once because it's all that's left is a leg.
Yep. And that's pretty much describes the current industry in Canada.
Yeah, more problems. And talking about problems, and talking about Northern Ontario, I see our next story touches on that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a little bit more about Sudbury. It's kind of funny that Sudbury gets the first 2 cannabis retail outlets in Northern Ontario, and that's where the OPP and Sudbury Police are teaming up to launch their roadside screening devices for cannabis in the Sudbury region.
So they're buying those devices that
they're
show
buying the draggers, 5,000.
Cannabis consumption provers, because they don't prove they don't show impairment.
No, they don't. As we all know, McMahon.
Why waste them?
McMahon, friend of the show, he consumed, and what was it, 6 or 8 hours after one bowl, he tested positive with the Draeger 5000.
He tested, and he also tested positive 10 hours later.
10 hours later, yeah. Just, they're notorious for not working. Even their own specs say they won't work in the cold. Well, Sudbury's pretty freaking cold 7 months of the year.
I think so, eh? Well, according to Sergeant Tim Burt up there, he says it'll be used for provincial sanctions. It is not a device that's going to be used to form grounds for an impaired driving charge. It's meant for provincial sanctions, commercial vehicles, graduated licenses, and young drivers who all have a 0 drugs and 0 alcohol when they're operating vehicles. So they're going to show that not to try to prove impairment, but to show that new drivers shouldn't be driving.
Well, it's the same thing. The same
They're proving
arguments
consumption
apply. All you're doing is proving consumption. A driver can consume 10 hours before and still be driving, and it's not against their record. This thing is only going to prove consumption in the last 24 hours, and I don't think that's against their regulations for them driving, especially commercial vehicles.
It says here that 0 drug and 0 alcohol. So by showing that there's THC on someone's tongue,
there's still 0 in their system. It's not affecting them anymore. They're saying that they can't.
It's not showing impairment, but it's showing consumption, and that's what they're trying to. And that's what they're trying to prove, saying that no, you haven't got 0 drugs, because here it shows that you've got THC on your tongue, so it's been in your system at some point.
Yeah. So they're saying that, new drivers and commercial drivers can never use cannabis.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, because the Draeger 5000, if you stop consuming, like, we know it can record it as high as 18 hours, but that's not forever.
So at least a minimum of 1 day before you're going to get behind.
Yeah, exactly. Which isn't fair. Believe me, I agree with you. It's not fair. Yeah. But that's what they're going to show. Yeah, it's going to be an argument, obviously, before the courts again.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I understand the reasoning behind all of that. I'm not arguing about the reasoning. I want to be clear on that. I get the fact that new drivers should have zero consumption in their system. I get that commercial vehicle drivers should be held to a higher standard because they are professional drivers. I agree with all of that. I get all of that. I disagree with the method that they're using for testing because it is not proven device. It's proven to be faulty way too many times. And too many people that shouldn't be charged are getting charged. And that needs to get fixed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's obviously room for improvement in this. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, for sure. The screening device, the Draeger 5000, is notoriously unreliable. And the government has even admitted the only reason they instituted it was to give them something to say we're doing something.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason they put it in there, because it was the best choice out of all of the ones that don't work. Well, how is that logical policy?
It's the best of the bad choices.
Yeah. How is that logical policy? Oh, well, we know it doesn't work, but it's the best one out of the ones that don't work. Really?
Yeah.
That's what we're basing our legal system on?
Yes, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what I have the issue with.
We're talking about rules and consuming. We got some changes going on in Alaska, which happens to be our last story before break, just so you know.
Yeah, Alaska's got it going on. We're grappling with the consumption issue here in Canada. Every province is different. In Ontario, we're having issues here too, even though we're supposed to be the most lenient. Alaska is moving forward with on-site consumption spaces, and they've got a pretty cool way of doing it. They've decided where you purchase it can become a lounge.
Yeah, so they can basically have an additional on-site consumption area, where the proposed rules would allow customers to use 1 gram of cannabis or 10 milligrams of edibles at a shop per day.
So they're following a lot of what they're doing in Amsterdam.
Well, it's only 1 gram, but still, a person could go in there, obviously, try some,
right,
and then maybe go back in the store and go back over to the store and buy more. Like, you buy 1 gram of that.
Like a bar. You go in, you buy a drink, you sit down, you have a drink, and then you leave. Then you come back and you want another drink. Okay, good.
Or
it's very similar to what they do in Amsterdam. There is a limit at the coffee shops in Amsterdam as well, but I think it is higher than 1 gram.
5, yeah. You can buy 5 grams and you consume it there. So this is 1 gram. So I just look at it as, okay, I want to try this strain, so I'm going to buy 1 gram of it. And if it's good, then I'm going to go buy more of it.
That's right. And I can take it home with me or whatever.
Yeah.
And use again. I mean, I think it's a great start to showing that consumption spaces are not a problem. They're not an issue, and they serve a need.
Yeah, well, these locations have to be in a freestanding building. They have to have separate ventilation, but accessible only through a secured door to the rest of the store.
Yeah, so a little separate space. You can build a little cabana off the back door, kind of a thing, and give people a space that has the proper ventilation and stuff. So regulations, of course, you're going to need regulations. You're going to need ventilation. Yeah. We have that in vapor lounges that exist today in Ontario and across Canada.
Exactly.
So it's a great step in the right direction for Alaska, for sure.
Now, these regulations don't allow for intoxicated or drunk customers to enter or remain in these premises.
Yeah.
In addition, the stores may not offer happy hour or in-house discounts, all-you-can-eat deals, or games that involve consuming cannabis or offer it as a prize.
Yeah. So no giving it away, and none of the stuff that they do with alcohol is going to be allowed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Nothing there that way. But it's a start, and those things can evolve hopefully quicker.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You've got to start somewhere, and this is a start. And it's great to see that the state is looking at consumption spaces because and more places need to in Canada as well.
Yeah, and like here in Ontario with opting out, and there in Alaska, places can opt out as well if they don't want to have these consumption places.
Yeah, there's dry spaces in Alaska and dry villages, just like there are everywhere. There are communities that are dry across Canada. So that's an option. If a place is dry, then they can opt out to having one.
Hey, I live in a dry cannabis community.
Yeah, you do, sadly.
Yeah, I know. Everybody around me has it. We don't. We won't. Okay, well, then it's time. I guess that's it. Let's take our break.
Okay, that went by fast.
It sure did. Okay, once again, it's our medication break. Kim and I will be right back after our session. Meanwhile, our listeners will hear more of that CBS California Cannabis Sales Report. And then, when we're back, we hear more about Hannah Fields singing about Smoking Amsterdam. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters. We are live here at 420radio.ca.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not? I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website. Sounds like a cool website. Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it. You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
If Californians are buying cannabis from unregulated sources, that means an unregulated transport company brought it there, and ultimately that means an unregulated grower grew it or produced it. And so it really is a cascading effect throughout the state.
And again, same complaints at the local level.
Because if you want to be able to bring a lot of people to Oakland, you can't have the highest taxes in the state.
So taxation, a resilient black market, and the infamous cash problem when it comes to capitalizing on California's largest cash crop, there is a lot of work left to do.
At the end of the day, what we really need is a systematic, comprehensive review and overhaul of the cannabis laws.
All right, here's the complicated thing about doing the overhaul of the system. It was passed by the voters. To undo a lot of this is frankly a constitutional question now in California. So we have the law that we have. We've been trying to make it work for a year. Clearly, it is prohibitive to a lot of people getting into this industry, thus the state getting a lot of money out of it, and fixing this is not going to be easy, Alan.
No, that was my thought, Wilson, is overhauling the laws. I mean, the state, the government, not necessarily known for being nimble and fast on its feet. That's going to take quite some time. So in the meantime, what happens? Are we stuck where we are?
Yeah, absolutely stuck where we are. And if you think about it, we showed you those farmers who were in dire straits in March. The state, just within a month of that, was trying to change the tax laws, but they couldn't do it, even though there was kind of a consensus. Change is not coming quickly. Now, one possible, enzyme in this whole thing would be the new governor. Gavin Newsom was supportive of this law. He might be able to push a little bit to get things changed, but exactly like we predicted 1 year ago. Smaller businesses have really struggled to incur the cost, and you wonder how many years that can last if the state really wants to recoup the money that it intended to recoup from legalizing this product.
Yeah, a lot of them going to go out of business without a doubt. All right, Wilson Walker, thanks so much.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with Cannabis and Coffee with Tamarijuana. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham, and no week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gagnac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at 420radio.ca. An apple a day won't keep this doctor away, but a gram of cannabis may keep you away from the doctor. Find out how by tuning into The Higher Estate with Dr. Ira Price, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here at 420radio.ca. Tune in to DJ Passion from the land of Ganja, the island of Jamaica, when he comes to you live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 420radio.ca.
Legacy 420 has medicinal and recreational products down to a science, literally. With 2 biochemists on staff and a chief scientific advisor, every product is tested in the Legacy 420 laboratory. Legacy 420, Tyendinaga. Open 9 to 9 every day. Visit legacy420.com.
You're talking to me.
Yeah, what you doing over in that crazy country?
Skipping and tripping and smoking dope and toking hash. You mean this crazy set everything's moving so fast.
Slow it down.
No gotta go, stay on my flow. We're going out to the show. Some band I don't know. Put some discs in my bag. $2.50 in cash. I bought a quarter ounce of kind. What do you think that'll last?
What you mean that's enough?
Yes, I know we puff tough. But tonight we're chilling out in smoky Amsterdam. You know you can't predict what's gonna happen to my man.
Okay, we're back again. Kim and I got our medication session into us, as you can tell. And what do you think, Kim? We got lots to go. We got one more session here. What do you think?
Yeah, one more session, a few more stories to go, and we could be here for hours if we wanted to. But let's start off this last segment down in the U.S. We're going to talk a little bit about New Jersey.
That's right, yes. The New Jersey cannabis legalization bill has gone through numerous changes since it was introduced two years ago. But recently, Governor Phil Murphy and top legislators announced an agreement on the cannabis legalization that includes an amendment to the bill. Now New Jersey could be on a path towards legal cannabis as soon as later this month.
Yeah, their legislative leaders are hoping for a March 25th floor vote if the committees clear the bills on Monday, and that did happen after this was released. So the highlights of what's in it. Basically, they're looking at different tax rates, regulations for it. Consumption areas are included in the bill, as well as deliveries.
That's right. Well, they're going to put a tax at the cultivators. The tax is $42 per ounce.
Yeah, and it's being levied, like you say, against the cultivators. So it gets passed on down the line, of course, within the price, but they're grabbing it right from the start.
Yeah, they say that the tax will remain the same no matter the price of the cannabis, meaning that when prices fall, the tax rate would eventually grow larger. So on a $300 for an ounce of cannabis, it's essentially 14% tax rate. But if you get a $200 ounce, the tax rate is 21%.
Yeah, so the amount of tax doesn't change. It's not a percentage. Yeah. It's an amount. So broken down to a percentage, you can give that based on the price of the current existing price of the cannabis. As soon as the price of the cannabis changes, of course, the percentage does as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and apparently they're the only ones in the states that have a flat tax rate.
Yeah, it's an odd way of doing it, having an amount rather than a percentage.
Yeah, and as far as regulators, in the end, they will be overseen by a brand new independent authority, the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, which will institute the rules, regulations, policies, procedures.
Yeah. Other states do use the tax at the cultivator level. but they don't have the standard amount. They use, of course, a percentage system like everybody else. This is the only place that is using the standard amount, but it is not the only place that taxes the cultivators.
That's right. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission will be made up of 5 members, 3 appointed by the governor, and 1 each at the request of the Senate President and Assembly Speaker. 1 commissioner would be a New Jersey representative at a national social justice organization.
Yeah, over 900 doctors are registered with the program.
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit.
Yeah, well, they say here that salaries for full-time jobs would be capped at $125,000 to $140,000 for the chairperson. Ooh, the executive director, $125,000.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Let's see, consumption areas. If cannabis consumers can't smoke it in public or in a car, where are they allowed to?
Yeah, similar to a dispensary, cannabis consumption areas such as a lounge that allows customers to consume can only be operated with the permission of the local municipality. So they're dropping this down to municipal level.
Yeah, and they must be owned and operated by the dispensary or located on the same property, which goes back to the Alaska scenario.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
so if you're allowed to sell, you can provide a space.
Abby would just be dying here. She could have her dispensary that she didn't win in the lottery, and she could have her vapor lounge all together.
Yeah, yeah, which is what a lot of people are wanting. So again, another state following the Alaska model for consumption areas, and it's good to see that the ones that are coming new into legal cannabis are including these things in their original legislation.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. They say here that our former governor, John Hickenlooper, he was Colorado there, he vetoed a bill at one time that would have permitted dispensaries to operate a tasting room.
Yeah, which is basically a consumption area, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Deliveries, deliveries if legal cannabis, if it passes under the proposed law, dispensaries or delivery companies could be licensed to deliver legal cannabis to consumers' front doors.
Yeah, the deliveries could only be completed by licensed business. So this wouldn't be like a ride share or Amazon Flex model, they say. You've got to be a licensed sales outlet, and then you can make a deal for offering delivery.
Yeah. Now, what is out, and this is very sad, this part here, what's out? Home growing.
Yeah, no home growing in the state. Very sad for sure. I don't even know what to say about this. I don't understand the logic.
Now it says allowing cannabis users, especially medical cannabis patients, to grow cannabis plants at home has been a long time legal argument that's going on. And
in Jersey, yeah, for sure. And well, everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everywhere, right?
So, yeah. And if New Jersey legalizes without allowing home growing, it would join Washington as the only states that don't allow it.
Yeah.
Most states allow people to grow 6 to 12 plants at home.
Yeah, it ranges between 6 and 12 in most of the United States. Of course, here in Canada, it's 4 plants per home address, not even per person, per home address. So much lower scale here in Canada for sure. But yeah, Jersey and Washington, only places in the U.S. that have a legal cannabis regime where even if you're a patient, you can't grow.
Yeah, and they have their legal limits for drug driving. It just looks like they haven't come up with a number yet. They're going to rely on DREs because they know, those devices aren't accurate.
Yeah, and the DREs are so much better, right?
Oh yeah, I know. Actually, I'm surprised it even mentions that because, from my understanding, DREs aren't even recognized down in the U.S.
No, they're not.
For court challenges.
Yeah, it was a Supreme Court ruling that said that they were basically unreliable. and it was tossed out in the United States. So many of the states have foregone the use of DREs.
Yeah. Well, not only New Jersey's dealing with legalization and more, it's always great to hear more of this, but I see New Mexico as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, another state on board with the New Jersey policy going to be taking effect pretty soon down in the United States.
Well, with New Mexico, they want to become the first U.S. state to set up its own government-operated stores.
Getting on board with the government-operated stores. Of course, New Mexico would do that. New Mexico is their idea for state-run pot shops comes from a trio of GOP state senators who broke with local Republican Party orthodoxy to embrace legal cannabis, which is decidedly big government approach that would have the state directly oversee all of the sales.
That's right. They say there's also provisions that were involved in this Democrat-sponsored legislation. Includes a provision to subsidize, help out the poor with medical cannabis for the people who need it, who can't afford to. Yeah, I think it's
that's a great idea, and we've been pitching that here in Canada for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
A portion of of this excise tax that they've put on recreational cannabis should be going back into help fund patients' medicine in the medical regime for sure. So glad to see that they're looking at doing that. But
that's right. Also, tax dollars from the recreational sales would fund employment and counseling programs in communities disproportionately affected by past federal and state drug laws, including training to enter the cannabis sector.
Yeah.
So, they're turning around using the money to help those that are affected by laws that, made them, put them in positions
all the right moves. They're making all the right moves for sure. But, I mean, the public sector could do the same thing. I can't recall the state that it was, but we did a story a couple of weeks back on Reefer here, and one of the states, a portion of the taxes that they charge on the fees, they have to commit to giving to charity or to homelessness or to helping their community is part of the deal for getting their license. And they just finished buying a whole bunch of beds for a homeless shelter. And they did that on their own, so we don't necessarily need a state-run agency to make these things happen.
Yeah, exactly. No, so it's good. New Mexico would levy a 17% tax on recreational cannabis sales and allow possession of up to 1 ounce. Local governments can opt out, foregoing tax proceeds in the process. Sounds like Ontario.
Yeah.
State tax proceeds would fund detection technologies and training for police to identify impaired drivers. Businesses could maintain zero testing as condition of employment, they say.
So as watched the neighboring Colorado's pioneering decision to legalize and tax cannabis with a mixture of apprehension and envy. Lawmakers in Santa Fe struggle to find stable sources of tax revenue to improve public education and raise teacher salaries. So they're hoping that this will help.
Now connect this line with a previous story. Sponsors say the bill would safeguard New Mexico's medical cannabis program by removing taxes on medical cannabis to keep down prices and ensure 70,000 participants don't flock to the recreational market.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the other way around.
It's the other way around.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's the other way around. So why can't our government look at it this way, right? That's exactly right. It works both ways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does, sure does. And they're also going to authorize lounges for smoking and vaping or eating any number of foods that people can get. Yeah.
So once again, another state looking at consumption at the onset of legalization, not as an afterthought, which is something that the government of Canada really, really dropped the ball on with legalization. You can't legalize a product and then give people nowhere to consume it.
Yeah, exactly. Also in New Mexico, some private dispensaries, private ones, okay, not the ones owned by the government, will be allowed to set up in remote areas at least 25 miles away from a city.
So that's excellent.
So
They're looking
that's
at
that's almost like a private retail. Yeah, private public. Yeah.
For rural. And again, looking at the rural aspect. I mean, New Mexico seems to really have hit all the bases with the key issues that would trouble consumers.
Yeah, they're doing that. And I'm just looking to see if they doesn't mention anything about home growing, does it?
No, they haven't touched on that in this at all, about the home growing aspect of it. So I would think it's going to remain legal, or they would have been sure to say it was going to be illegal.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Good things going on in New Mexico. For sure. And, speaking of good things going on, things across the globe seem to be taking a reversal with marijuana policy.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Exactly. European hemp stakeholders, they're all upbeat because over there they are reversing a policy that I guess didn't allow CBD into food. Now they're allowing it.
Yeah, and this hit hard. We actually reported on this back in January, I think, when the announcement first came out from the EU that they were going to start disallowing CBD in preparations, in food preparations and stuff like that are currently sold there. Well, of course, the food industry went crazy because it's a huge market, and it would basically handicap all of them in this regime. So they're taking another look.
That's right. They say 54% of consumers are willing to buy CBDs, even if they weren't legal. So, there's a market right there, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. And they would be handcuffing, the legal producers of these legal products that have been tested and gone through all of the standards commissions and everything else. They would be handcuffed if they weren't allowed to supply that market with these products that people are looking to buy. People would automatically migrate to the gray and the black market, which isn't regulated, and products may not live up to standards.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. What do you do there?
Yeah, so they're fighting back, and they went up against them, and they said, "No, you can't do this." So they are re-looking at it, and they're taking another look and saying, "Well, maybe we've got to rethink this."
Yep, they say here that they use specific examples from historical sources in Germany, Italy, Poland, Slovakia, and Sweden, showing that CBD-laden hemp has been consumed on the continent for centuries, even citing a recipe for a hemp dish from the Vatican chef during the papacy of Pope Martin V in the early 15th century.
Yes,
it's
been part of their diet and their dietary fiber and nutrient regime for centuries. For the EU's Food and Drug Administration to take it off the market and handcuff these industry is ludicrous, and they're not going to stand for it. So bringing all of this to light and to the forefront of the regulators, they're forced to take another look.
Yeah. Well, they have a letter here that they've included in this article, and the bold headline above it says that reasonable rules can avoid a shitstorm. How often do you see shitstorm in a newspaper article? Wow. All right. Well, you got any more on that, Kim?
No, it's just amazing. I was actually talking, but I had you on mute. It's just amazing that they would use that paraphrase that in a document on the Pope in the EU.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. Over in Europe, they're changing, reversing rules on CBD and food, which is a great thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and-
More great things going on in back in the United States for a minute. We're going to talk a little bit about sports.
That's right.
Cannabis.
That's right, because talking about changing things, we recently had a story about the NHL doing with the alumni doing research and stuff into cannabis. Now we see here that the NFL considers a change to cannabis policy.
Yeah, it's rather funny that this is all taking place right after a large star in the NFL came out about cannabis consumption and walked off the field because he was told he couldn't consume cannabis anymore. So he quit the NFL. And then just days after that, the NFL is coming out with this new policy.
Yeah.
They finally say that they're finally ready to chill, at least when it comes to cannabis, according to the NBC Sports.
The sports analysts suspect that the NFL will likely use the offer of any revision of the substance abuse policy as a bargaining chip in negotiations and expect concessions from the players using in return. So this is something that's all going to come around when they get into the negotiations for the next contract.
Yeah, contract negotiations are coming up, and they're using this as leverage for the players. But they're not going to just give this to them; they're going to want concessions.
That's right. Well, presently, under the current policy, players are subject to suspensions following 2 positive tests. The first test puts a player in the NFL's Stage 2 intervention program, which means increased testing for up to 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Years of testing, and you better test negative at all of them. So, hopefully they'll be doing away with those kind of policies and programs in the NFL. And we're seeing this come up more and more in sports. As you said,
Yeah.
we've seen it in the NHL just a couple of weeks ago.
That's right. Well, a lot of it has to do with the opioids and giving players an option of going someplace else. In a 2016 survey of 226 of the NFL's 3,000 players on active rosters, they found that 61% believe that players should take fewer injections for strong anti-inflammatory drugs if they could treat pain legally with cannabis. In another study, ESPN reported that 71% of 644 NFL players that were surveyed misused opioids.
Yeah.
Wow, 71%. There's a big enough reason just to allow cannabis.
Yeah, they're taking drugs like Toradol and Oxys, and morphine even. Heavy opiates. You see these NFL players on the field. They take a frickin' beating. For sure they're sore. Why not offer them a safer alternative?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Exactly. I see here there's one player, David Irving. He's of the Dallas Cowboys. He's currently serving a suspension, I believe, for cannabis, I guess. He responded with the news saying that, well, once they do that, give me a call, because it's bullshit. How I have Xanax bars right next to me to take, given to me by the NFL, of course.
Yeah.
However, everybody can't smoke cannabis.
That's right. You take these pills that are manufactured by pharmaceutical company that come with a list taller than you are of side effects that could possibly cause, organ damage and everything else, and eliminate your quality of life. But don't smoke this joint that'll make you feel better and won't have any side effects.
Yeah. Retired Miami Dolphin Larry Chester is quoted in a CBS report as saying that after retiring from the NFL, he coped with chronic pain by practically eating opioids, which he said made him belligerent towards his family and others. And what allowed him to quit opioids was a prescription to CBD that helped to help him with his problems such as pain, inflammation, and anxiety.
Yeah, that's right.
He called it life-saving.
That's it.
Might change.
And
Yep.
and it is for many people. It is life-saving medicine for sure. There's no question there. The data is already in on this, and it's about time these sports associations got on board.
Yeah, well, the commissioner, Ralph Goodale, and the Players Association have, gotten together and have discussed this. But unfortunately, the current bargaining agreement is set to expire in 2021, so that's another 2 years.
Yeah, another 2 years away. Hopefully they'll be able to integrate some concessions before that, because I mean that's a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And it says here that the NFL should consider taking notes from the NHL.
Yeah.
They test players, all that stuff. But it says here, there's no penalties or suspensions, but a spokesman has been quoted saying the NHL does not condone cannabis use.
Yeah.
So there's no penalties or suspensions, whereas there obviously is in the NFL, because that player is serving a suspension for substance use.
You can simply take the stand that you don't condone it, but you don't have to punish the players if they've consumed. Like we said in other stories that we reported on today, like tests like the Drager 5000 and everything else, even blood tests and urine tests that they do on these players, all it does is prove consumption. If they're not consuming when they're doing their job, no matter what that job is, then it shouldn't matter what they do on their off time, especially in places that have a legal product. And the majority of states have a legal product, either recreational or medicinal, and all of Canada does. So the NFL needs to get on board.
Yo, for sure. Big time. Big time. Do it for their players, man. Do it for your players. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, Kim, move on to our last story of the day.
Yes, it's a good one.
It's very interesting. We're hearing all these stories about candies and how they can't be enticing to children. What's our next story about?
I love this, and I'm sure the Canadian government is just going to love this as well. We're going to talk a little bit about David Klein. If you don't recognize the name, well, he revolutionized the cannabis or the candy industry back in 1976 with his creation of the Jelly Belly Jelly Bean. The Jelly Belly Jelly Bean, it comes in a variety of interesting flavors to entice candy lovers across the board. Well, Mr. Klein is diving into medicated CBD jelly beans.
There you go. CBD jelly beans. That sounds
CBD
awesome.
jelly beans, made by the creator, the founder of Jelly Belly Jelly Beans. These are renowned across the world. I mean, they were made famous, of course, mostly by President Reagan, who just loved his Jelly Bellies. And you had jars of them all over the White House. It's funny because of the push from the government saying, cannabis-infused candy can't be child-friendly. What's more friendly to a child than a jelly bean?
That's right, exactly. Jelly bean sure is. And just so you know, he just, Mr. Klein there, David Klein, he just recently came up with this idea because he went looking. He says, is anybody producing a CBD jelly bean? And he couldn't find any. So why not? The guy who created them, why not create a CBD jelly bean?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the perfect recipe for the perfect jelly bean that's loved by millions across the world. Why not infuse it with CBD? He also has a line for those that are anti-sugar and saying that, CBD medicine shouldn't be consumed with sugar because sugar is bad for you. He also has a sugar-free line.
There you go. There you go. Just so you know, he started jelly beans with an investment of $800.
$800. He became the jelly bean king of the world for
right
$800.
Now, yeah, ranks in 100 or rakes in $190 million investment.
Yep. And he called it the biggest mistake he made in his life, and now he can't believe the fame from it.
That's right. Yeah. No, this would be interesting. It'd be really good to see. CBD jelly beans. I have no problem with them
CBD
whatsoever.
jelly beans. Pick them up soon from the Jelly Belly King himself.
And just so you know, they will come in sugar-free varieties as well.
Yeah, they'll be offering the sugar-free brand because a lot of people are not gravitating towards the sugar candies these days, and they're looking for the sugar-free variety. So they are available in a sugar-free variety as well.
That's right. The inventory features an assortment of sweet, sour, and sugar-free jelly beans. Selections include sour cherry goosebump, sweet and sour, and everything nice drops, and a CBD 7-day pack.
I love that idea. They're going to be in a pack, and it'll include 7-day dosages, kind of, I guess, like those little pill medtainers. Take your Jelly Belly when it's time.
That's right. Just so you know, the candies will not include any THC, as it's focusing on the CBD only varieties for now.
For now.
The patent pending recipe, interesting, will include fruit juice.
Yeah.
He wants to make it healthy as possible, he says.
Healthy as possible. Healthy candy. Why not? I mean, people are putting this down a little bit, saying, oh, yeah, right, candy and medicine, blah, 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 blah. You know what? We all eat candy. Candy is fun. There's nothing wrong with candy. Adults eat candy. We love it. Adults are the largest consumers of candy over children. It takes us back to our childhood. What's wrong with putting something that's actually good for you in there?
We watch cartoons as a kid, and they have adult cartoons when we get older.
That's right.
We can have jelly beans as a kid, and we can have adult jelly beans.
That's right. Adult jelly beans. It's a great invention. I think it's fantastic. I wish them the best of luck, and I'm looking forward to trying them out.
Same here. See as things go. Okay, Kim. Well, that's our Reefer Report. From the Legacy420.com news desk for March the 18th, 2019. And in closing, we'd like to say thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your coworkers, your neighbor, and the prohibitionist down the street. Until, again, next time, which is next week, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
Bark at you later.
Legacy 420 has medicinal and recreational products down to a science, literally. With 2 biochemists on staff and a chief scientific advisor, every product is tested in the Legacy 420 laboratory. Legacy 420, Tyendinaga. Open 9 to 9 every day. Visit legacy420.com.
So what are you doing? Nothing. Why not? Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website. Sounds like a cool website. Yeah, it's alright. Oh, I might have it. You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.